Hey Jam Fam, let's take God at His word today. Today I'm going to talk about zealousness, because a lot of people have this passion for God, they're zealous for God, but it's not the right kind of zealous that people have. What kind of zealousness must we have? Let's see from Romans chapter 10 from verse 2 to 4 to get this idea about the zealousness that I'm talking about. So it says, I know what enthusiasm they have for God, but it is misdirected zeal. It's not according to knowledge, basically. And it says, for they don't understand God's way of making people right with Himself. Refusing to accept God's way, they cling to their own way of getting right with God by trying to keep the law. For Christ has already accomplished the purpose for which the law was given. As a result, all who believe in Him are made right with God. So if you see these three verses, Paul's trying to tell us that okay, people have that passion for God, they have that zealousness, but it's not the right kind. It's not with the knowledge of who God is. They have their own ways of thinking, oh, this is how God is, this is how He wants people to be, this is how He'll be impressed, this is how this is what He expects from us. All wrong notions. So Paul's saying, okay, people are zealous for God, but it's not the right kind of zeal they have. They do not even have the knowledge to base their zeal upon. Few people, when they have a zeal, they know the subject. That's why they want to grow in that more or anything. That's why they have that zeal, that passion to pursue it. But here Paul says, okay, people are zealous, but it's not according to the right subject. If they don't have the right knowledge of who God is. And that's why it says they don't understand God's way of making people right with Him. If you see the knowledge of God that Paul highlighted in verse 2, he's linking it to how people think God makes people right. That's the foundation. If you know that we have been justified by faith, that means we are completely clear about the heart of God. We are completely clear about the person of God. That's why he says they don't have the knowledge of God. That's what it says in various translations, second verse. And that's what in verse 3 also he's trying to say, that see, they don't know how God makes people right with Him. See, that if you're clear about that, then Paul says that you have the knowledge of God. Because like I said, he linked both of them. And if you continue to read that, it says people are refusing to accept God's way. That means they don't have the knowledge of God, which means like about how God justifies people. They have their own assumptions that this is how people are justified, this is how people are made right, this is how we are made holy. They have their own notions. And to base your zeal upon something that is not true doesn't make any sense. That's what Paul says. What point does it make if you have zeal on something that's not true? See, you have to base that zeal for God on the knowledge, on the fact that God makes people right by believing in Him. That's why even in 4th verse it says, Christ is the purpose of the law. He is the goal of the law. Law was given to show people that no, you can't, you need a savior, right? That means the purpose of the law was only till Jesus came. After Jesus came, the justification process has completely changed. It is now based only on the finished work of Jesus. That's why to have zeal for God also, you must know that it's not you. The zealousness must be based on the knowledge of God. I mean the right knowledge, which is knowing how God justifies His people. When you are clear about that, your zeal will make sense and your zeal will go and grow in the right way. Your passion for God will be going in the right way. If you see God as something He is not, there is no point for your zeal, because you're building on sand then. But if you know the facts about this whole justification process, then you have the knowledge about the whole gospel. Then your zeal builds. I mean, then there is sense when you have zeal for that. Christ is the end of law. The purpose of law was to point to Christ. When it's done, Christ is the center. Don't base the whole knowledge, your knowledge on the old covenant, Old Testament. Everything has changed now. We have to base our zeal on Jesus, on what He has done, not what you should do. And even if you go to Romans chapter 9 from verse 30, it says, even though the Gentiles were not trying to follow like God's law, God's standards, God's, this whole law, 10 commandments or whatever, they were still made right with God. See, if you think your way of justification was right, then the Gentiles shouldn't be saved. But here it says Gentiles were made right with God even though they didn't know the law, even though they didn't follow the law. That means law has no position in the new covenant. And if you go to verse 30, it says that in the end it says, and it was by faith that this took place. So this whole justification is not by what you think, what your works or your standards of holiness. No, it is by faith. And 31st verse says, but the people of Israel who tried so hard to please God by trying to keep the law never succeeded. Why not? Because they were trying to get right with God by keeping the law instead of trusting in Him. Gentiles were saved, but the God covenant people, Israel, they couldn't please God because they relied on their works. That they based their justification on works and not on this statement of on this blessing of justification by faith. That's why I see the zeal must be based on the knowledge, the right knowledge, which is believing that you have been justified by faith. Then your zeal makes sense. That's the right kind of zealousness we all must possess, right? So my Jam fam, this is grace for you. God bless you.